11:17 is the time here in the WHIP studios. Zach Gelb and Mike Zahn here with you. The NCAA tournament is coming to Philadelphia this weekend. It's going to be Indiana, UNC, and Notre Dame, Wisconsin. A man that will be in Louisville and then Philadelphia is the always diligent Dick Hoops Weiss, who joins us right now on the show. Hoops, it's Zach and Mike. Thanks for a few minutes, and how are you?
Hey, it's my pleasure, guys. How's everybody doing?
Well, we're doing great, and you know what? If no one's doing great that's a college basketball fan after this weekend, I don't know what to say to them. That was some of the best basketball that I've ever seen.
The wildest first 2 days, even the wildest first weekend that I can remember. I mean, there were more upsets than any time since 2001, more fantastic finishes, more improbable comebacks. It just goes to show, A, there's much more parity than most people think, and B, there's a lot of misseeding going on from the committee because a lot of these teams are a lot better than people thought.
Yeah, one of those games, I thought Indiana, Kentucky should have happened a week later. How does the committee do a better job to make sure that they make these seeds better in the future?
I actually think it's easy to see the brand name schools. It's easy to see the schools on TV. It's not quite as easy to see Conference USA and Southland Conference and the WCC. I think you need to get out and see them for an eye test. They can say they've seen them. If they've seen them, they would have known that some of these teams are a lot better than they look on paper. I think sometimes too often we rely on analytics and we don't rely enough on the eye test, and I think it's a mistake. One of the regional semifinals this week is 10 versus 11, Syracuse and Gonzaga. You're not locked. Even though you have all 4 ones alive and you have 2 twos and 2 threes, you're not locked into anything. And this tournament is still a lot more wide open than people would imagine.
When you take a look at the games in Philly this weekend, Indiana, UNC, and Notre Dame, Wisconsin, what stands out to you in those matchups, and who you're leaning towards?
Well, I think Carolina's playing very, very well now. They're shooting the ball extremely well. They scored 44 points in the last 15 minutes against Providence the other night. It's a team that might not be vintage Carolina team, but it has a lot of upperclassmen. It has a player at every position. It has Marcus Page finally starting to play pretty well offensively. It has a legitimate star in Bryce Johnson that has physical size. And they're playing against an Indiana team that's probably getting the most out of their personnel, ironically, ever since James Blackman Jr. got hurt in January. A great leader in Yogi Ferrell, maybe the best group of shooters that you'll see in the region. I think that Tom Green's coaching effort on Saturday against Kentucky was probably his best since he's been at Bloomington, and he's had teams that are ranked preseason #1 when Zeller and Oladipo were there. So I like that game. I think a lot will depend on whether Carolina can control a fundamentally sound Indiana team with its athleticism, and whether Page can take Yogi Ferrell out of the game. Second game, kind of a 6 versus 7, somewhat of a surprise. Notre Dame is there. I won't say it was luck, but it would have been nice if SF Austin, who played their hearts out, had actually boxed out in the last play, opened the door for Rex Flugler, who had only had 1 field goal all day, to make the game winner on a tip off an offensive rebound. Wisconsin is also kind of lucky to be there. Bronson Koenig, who had been shooting the 3 terribly the previous 3 games, makes a game-tying 3 with 14 seconds to play, and then comes back and makes a game winner. buzzer. I don't know that either of these teams are as good as they were last year. Certainly not Wisconsin, and certainly not Notre Dame. But in a year where I don't know that there isn't so much parity that a 6 and a 7 can make it this far, anything is possible, guys.
We're talking to a member of the College Basketball Writers Hall of Fame, and that's Dick Weiss. And Dick, you were talking about the excitement surrounding the UNC-Indiana game. Obviously, UNC being one of the 4 remaining number 1 seeds, as that number 1 seed has yet to lose. Do you think Indiana has the best chance at beating that number 1 seed in UNC? When you look across the nation of the remaining number 1 seeds, who do you think is the most likely to be out in the Sweet 16?
Oregon has got to play a scratch field out in Anaheim. I mean, they get Duke in the semifinals, and they get Oklahoma most likely in the finals. Those will be difficult games. I mean, the Pac-12 for as many teams as they got in the tournament only has 1 team left, and that team had to scramble to get by St. Joe's out in Spokane in a late night game. I mean, Oregon has personnel, but I'm not sure they didn't overwhelm the Hawks.
Now, many people are looking at the American Athletic Conference and felt that they didn't get the respect they deserve. The first 2 years, there were a couple snubs. This year, they get 4 teams in. They have a combined 1-4 record. None of the 4 teams made it past that first weekend. UConn was the only one to win. Do you think that hurts the American Athletic Conference moving forward?
I think that had SMU been in the tournament, they probably would have had a shot because they have personnel. They have Nick Moore. They have experience. They've got Larry Brown. They probably should have won the first round game last year against UCLA, except for a controversial call at the end. So I think you kind of get a skewed view of the league. Frankly, I am stunned that the league got 4 teams in. I'm stunned that Tulsa got in, especially after losing badly to Memphis in the first round of the tournament. But it just goes to show that the whiteboards are probably up Saturday night. I mean, I think it's great that Temple got in this year, especially after what happened to them last year. I think if you win a conference championship at a high mid-major level, you should automatically get in. I don't think there should be any question about that. Most people going into the tournament, frankly, thought that Cincinnati and Connecticut were locks, and that Temple was sitting on the bubble. I mean, but as it turned out, it left like Oresco giddy. I mean, when he got 4 teams in. The problem you have with a new league is you have to prove yourself. I frankly felt that this league has gotten misseeded since it started. I mean, the year that Connecticut won the national championship at 14, they were a 7, and Louisville, which was ranked 5th in the final AP poll, was a 4. I mean, there's something wrong with that as far as seeding is concerned. Then last year, SMU gets a 6, and Temple, who should have been in, didn't get in. This year, the highest seed was Connecticut and Cincinnati, who were both 9s. I mean, it's if you're going to put 4 teams in, you must have enough respect for a conference. It would have been nice to see one of the conference teams get seeded a little bit higher. The problem you had is that there weren't a lot. The one team that had good non-league wins was SMU, and they were ineligible for the tournament. The other teams, I mean, I know that Connecticut beat Texas and Michigan, but they also lost twice to Temple and Cincinnati during the regular season.
So let's stay here with the Owls, because I saw something that you put on Twitter over the weekend after the Owls lost in heartbreaking fashion, where the refs missed a push-off at the buzzer and Woodbury tips it in. You wrote on Twitter that it's time for Temple fans to get off Fran Dunphy's case. I agree with you. Why'd you put that out there on Twitter, and why do you think that?
probably because Franny and I have been friends since we've been 9 years old. But over and above that, the guy's a 2-year American Conference Coach of the Year. This was not the most talented team he's ever coached.
You're right.
If I would say anything, I would love them to be able to recruit better players, but it's been harder. It seems to have been harder to recruit the Philadelphia kid lately than ever before. And Rasheed Jordan would have been so much better off if he'd gone to Temple as opposed to St. John's. He lives 6 blocks from the campus. I mean, and I think that sometimes kids feel that if they're from the city, they need to get away. Take a look at the amount of kids that have gone to Syracuse from Millman. Goretti. I mean, Temple had always had success recruiting South Philadelphia. They had always had success recruiting North Philadelphia. Lately, not so much, and they've had to go outside the city to get their players. I'm a big believer that kids ought to really consider staying in their backyard if they want to make a living in the city where they grew up. Because if they're a star in the Big Five, they're probably going to end up with a pretty good job even if they don't play professionally. And if you take a look at Franny's guards, Cummings last year, DeCozy last year, Wyatt a couple of years ago, the players have all gotten better at that position. And, I mean, look, everybody wants to compare Franny to John Chaney. John Chaney's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he never got to a Final Four, but he did get to 5 Final Eights and wasn't afraid to play anybody, and did a pretty good job recruiting. He had a lot of strong contacts down south, and he had an enormous iconic presence in the black community in the city, and because parents knew that he would take care of their children. I think sometimes it's hard. I think Franny had to make an adjustment when he first got there. I mean, coming from the Ivies to the Atlantic Sun and now the American is never an easy thing, but the guy has found a way to get his teams in the postseason. Would I like to see him win more games in March? I'm sure no more than he would. I mean, if you take a look at their season this year, they really didn't have a great signature win non-league, but they did a lot of damage in the league. I mean, they beat SMU, they beat Tulsa, they beat Cincinnati twice, they beat Connecticut twice. I mean, those are wins that resonate with the conference and wins that probably get you a bit.
Yeah, they beat every team in the conference this year, and this was a team going into the year where I didn't think they had the best roster, and I thought probably they were going to be an NIT team, and really that SMU win started to change things around. But let me just ask you this real quickly as we're joined by Dick Hoops Weiss right now for a few more minutes. You've known Fran for a long time. Give me your best Fran Dunphy story then.
He was a 3-sport athlete at Malvern. He could have played any sport in college, but he chose to play basketball because he kind of grew up playing over at Aronimink Swim Club with guys like Jimmy Lynam and Herb McGee and Jack Ramsey.
Wow.
All these kids from Jeff Petrie, all these kids from Delaware County would go over to Aronimink Swim Club every Sunday night and play pickup games. And Franny was part of it. He grew up in Drexel Hill, St. Dorothy's, Malvern Prep, and he's never. The Philly guys are amazing. They never really leave the city. Look at Phil Martelli. Look at Franny. They probably have had other opportunities to go elsewhere, but they never really pursue them. They seem happy with their lives here. I think it's what makes the coaching in Philadelphia really special is the fact that people really like coaching here. Now, how much longer will Franny coach at Temple? I don't know. He's 68 now. I don't know how much longer he'll coach, but if he can get a team to the NCAA tournament every year, I'm happy, and if you can win a game, I'm even happier. And they had a legitimate shot to win that game the other day against Iowa.
Maybe you guys will retire in the same year, Hoops. How about that?
I'm not planning on retiring for a couple of years, so I wouldn't mind that. But you know what? Frank's happy doing what he does. I'm happy doing what I do. As long as I can get somebody to pay me to go to all these games, I'm totally pleased.
Yeah, and I don't blame you. But sticking in Philadelphia, Jay Wright is the only remaining head coach in Philadelphia with his team in the Sweet 16. They have a big matchup against Jim Larrañaga and the Miami Hurricanes, who went to the championship game of the NIT last year. Do you think Miami will give Villanova more fits than they had this first weekend?
I do. I don't think Villanova will get nearly as many open looks as they got against Iowa. Miami has 3 fifth-year seniors. They have transfers who sat out. They have very good guard play. I mean, they're good enough that Newton can't play. He can't start for them. I mean, they're playing 2 fifth-year seniors, Rodriguez and McClellan, and I think Rodriguez is probably as good as any point guard in the ACC, including Page. I think he's a sensational talent. So they'll really put a lot of pressure on Villanova, and they're big and physical up front. So it's going to be an interesting game. Villanova, I see, is the favorite, but and that's probably because Miami shows traces of inconsistency. I mean, they haven't really been pushed. They got Buffalo in the first game, and they got Wichita State, a team that had to travel after a first 4 game 2 nights earlier, and even then they had a moment of doubt because they had a 26-7 lead over Wichita, and then now 10 minutes later they're down by a point, 43-42. So their game comes and goes. Jimmy's a very good coach. He took Mason to the Final Four in 06. He has big physical athletes. They have wins over Duke and Carolina in the same year. They finished second in what I think is easily the best league in the country. They were 13-5. They're a legitimate team. They got the semifinals of the ACC tournament before they lost to Virginia, and they probably merited the 3 seed.
Hoops, my dad always used to tell me, my old man, when it's March, you have to find a way to talk to Dick Hoops Weiss, and he's exactly right.
Tell you, please say hello to your father for me, Zach. Yeah, I love him. So.
Will do, Hoops. Thanks so much. This was great.
Hey, listen, enjoy the game, fellas.